Hello and welcome to another video from the only channel that you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy it. And today's video is going to be a part 2 of the video I did about times and seasons a couple of days ago. The thing that I always bring out before I even start talking is that this Bible that we're talking about is not a book of rules about sexual conduct and cussing and alcohol. It is a written history of the war between God's kingdom and Satan's empire, or if you prefer, between civilization and creation. That's what the Bible is. It's all it is. And it's not just a history of what's happened, it's a history of what's going to happen in advance. So, if that's a history of the world recorded in the Bible, then what is a secular history? You know, why is secular history different than Bible history? Well, there's a reason. Just like in our modern world, where we know that there's things that actually happen, but then what we get fed is the cover story, you know, the network story, whatever. I'm not even going to go into some of this conspiracy theory stuff, but you know that news, real news, never matches the news that we're fed. It's the same thing with mythology. The reason we call it mythology now is because so much of it's been uncovered as false that they're disassociating themselves from it. You know, the government does not want to tell you that Apollo is real, or that Ra is real, or Ishtar is real, or Nimrod, because they know they look stupid. But these were real people. I mean, when I call them people, angels, demons, they're people. They have emotions, they have personalities, and they actually ruled the earth at one time. Well, the flood was brought about to humiliate them. You know, before the flood, the form of worship was you would go to the temple, and you would go down up to Satan, go up to Eve, go up to the Nephilim, and bow down, you know, kiss their ring, or whatever they had going on at that time, give them a gift. And they were there in fleshly form. But we know that sometime before the flood, Eve died. Then when the flood came, all of the Nephilim were wiped out, and they never came back. And the demons, after that, never appear to be able to materialize fleshly bodies. And don't know why. The Bible doesn't go into any details. But that's why all religions earthwide are based on a Trinity today, because it was, and if you don't understand what I'm saying, go back and watch my series about the all-seeing eye, and that explains it a little bit better. But after the flood, Satan had to come out with a whole new scheme for his worshipers, and with no Nephilim there, all he could do was throw out some, you know, gods, and there were 10 of them, and I'm going to tell you why there were 10. It's all based on the calendar. This entire religious scheme dependent on being able to follow the gods throughout the year. So on January you worship this god, in February you worship another god. They would have a festival, 12 festivals a year, but once a year was a very special festival, because as we said before, the year used to actually be 360 days long with 12 30-day months. So you could just look up at the moon the way we, you know, if we look at a clock and it has no numbers on it, and they have clocks like that, you go in office buildings and there's a clock, no numbers, I hate them, but you look at it and you know what time it is. You know, it's 3:15 or it's 12:30. You can tell by looking at a clock face with no numbers what time it is. Well, that's the way people in the past could look at the moon. You know, I mean, it wasn't marked with numbers or anything, but they could tell when it was a new moon, when it was a full moon or a quarter moon. And so they knew, if not exactly what day it was, they pretty much knew close to what day it was. And you couldn't deny a new moon or a full moon. So they would have their entire year based on this 360-day cycle, solar cycle, and 12 30-day lunar cycles that were all matched up. Now, when God finished his creation, he commanded his creation to rest, Shabbat, Sabbath. And in fact, a lot of religions still observe a weekly Sabbath in memorial of God's Sabbath. But God's Sabbath's a little different. It ain't a 7-day week where the 6 days were for work and 1 day is for rest. When he says Shabbat to Adam and Eve, that meant rest forever. And the proof is in what we see around us. You know, first day he created this, second day he created that, he got to the 6th day he created that. He said, it's very good. Don't touch nothing. This is very good. Do not mess with my creation. And there is no evidence that God has created anything since then. You know, we don't get new varieties of fish and birds and lizards anymore. So we're in the Sabbath. But these people didn't enter the Sabbath. They started building stuff, cutting down trees, digging up rocks, cutting stone, melting metal. And, you know, the vast majority of everything built in the ancient world was for worship. They had temples. And I'm not just talking about the Holy Land. You can go to South America, China, and they got temples. And almost every temple is designed with some kind of a feature that would follow the sun. There might be a big old obelisk, you know, with a point on top, and like a sundial. As the sun would go across the sky, that obelisk would throw a shadow. And that shadow, sometimes during the course of the day, would land on one of the statues of one of the other 10 gods. You see, Eve was represented by one of the months, and Satan was represented by the other month. Throughout history, every culture, doesn't matter if it's ancient Egypt, Phoenicia, Greece, Babylonia, Rome, they all had these 10 minor gods that are in the inner circle of Satan and the mother goddess, which is Eve. You have to go back and watch the All-Seeing Eye video if you don't understand what I'm talking about. But the statues, this feature would cast a shadow, or it would be just an orifice, like a hole. You'd have this big temple with a hole in the roof, and it would shine down a light onto a statue of one of the gods, or it could be just one of the symbols for the gods. A really kind of a one that shows up a lot is the obelisk, like the Washington Monument. And once a year, on the summer solstice, it would cast a shadow on the All-Seeing Eye, which represented Eve. That obelisk represented Satan's sexual organ. And the All-Seeing Eye, like I say, you got to go back and watch the video, that All-Seeing Eye represented Eve's sexual organ. So that shadow, once a year, would come across there and land on that All-Seeing Eye. Well, you could imagine these people had no way to communicate. People in China couldn't communicate with people in Phoenicia, couldn't come over here and communicate with people in South America or North America. And so no one really would have been paying close enough attention. They may have noticed that the shadow was kind of falling across, you know, one of the other gods, Tammuz maybe, it's the month of Tammuz, and it kind of fell across his image crooked. But they never would have understood exactly how big of a deal this was until the summer solstice. And you could imagine how much effect this would have had. These people for generations had traveled to the temple, some of them hundreds of miles. They brought their gift offerings. They would get there. The priests would be wearing red costumes with white trim. The trees all the way around the temple would have been decorated. They would have hung ornaments all over the trees. They would have been singing carols. And I don't know if I told you this or not, but the summer solstice is right around December 25th. So these people spent a month in preparation, traveled, brought their whole families, everybody, even the sick, brought them to the temple. They're all standing there waiting, and the orchestra starts to play, blow the horns and beat the drums. And they're watching this shadow, or watching this beam of light, go across the courtyard, and there's the All-Seeing Eye, you know, Eve's reproductive organs, and the shadow coming from Satan's reproductive organs. And they didn't match. Nothing happened. Can you imagine planning your whole year out to watch that shadow fall across the center of the All-Seeing Eye, and nothing happened? In just one moment in time, the creator of the universe, Jehovah God, destroyed every single religion on the planet. This is just a very, very small part of the puzzle. In the future, we're going to explain every single prophecy in the Bible with just that knowledge. The knowledge of the All-Seeing Eye, the knowledge of the calendar, the knowledge that Jehovah stopped the calendar, the knowledge that he's about to start it up again, and the knowledge that when we look at these numbers, 12 months, 10 subordinate demons to Satan and Eve, 7 days a week. If you look at Revelation, the book of Revelation, the entire book of Revelation is like a slap in Satan's face. It goes through and it completely destroys his entire worship system and makes fun of it. And then it introduces God's worship system and God's real calendar. That's what we're going to talk about next. If you don't want to subscribe, don't listen to me.